distortion is stronger for job applicants than for dating scenarios, right? Which is
crazy.
Yeah, people feel an enormous amount of pressure to comply to, and there's already enormous amount of pressure in the dating scene. So let's not open that can of worms. But like the fact that the fact that it is even stronger for job applications tells us both how, I don't want to say desperate, but how much pressure there can be on an applicant when trying to join an organization. Welcome back to Firm Factor, everyone. I am so pleased to introduce a new co-host for a regularly appearing show. This is Carolyn Stevens. Carolyn, who the hell are you? Tell the people what they need to know.
Hi, John. Great to be here. My name is Carolyn Stevens. I have a background in legal recruiting, working at law firms, HR, all of that good stuff. And I'm here at Hemmat Law as the new director of talent, which I'm super excited about.
And since I let Carolyn into the building, we really want to talk more and drill down more into what the hell makes a good recruitment cycle, a good firm culture, because behind the marketing and operations questions I always get from legal practitioners is the number one thing I always get asked is, how the hell do I make this place work, like worth working at? Because our product goes home in the elevator every day, back to their families and lives and, you know, hopes and dreams. And so we really wanted to focus a little bit more on that. But today we're talking about personality tests. Let's get into it.
So, what is a personality test? It's a tool designed to measure individual traits, behaviors, and preferences. Basically, a structured way to understand how people tend to think, act, and interact.
And this is something I really wanted to talk about because I don't know if they're worth anything, right? And these assessments rely, at least in my opinion, they rely on self-reporting and self-perception a lot. Now, how long have they been around?
They've been around for quite a while. So they came out, I think, in the beginning of the early 1900s. I think the first one was something called the Big Five.
And that's just like primary locuses of like different types of major personality traits and how they come together into standardized battery. I'm familiar with the Myers Briggs and is it DiSC?
Yes.
DISC?
Yep.
These are newer. These kind of got big in like the early aughts and then have really picked up momentum for corporate astrology since. Well, that's what I think. That's what I think they are. We'll get more into that later. But I think what the audience needs to know is that there's a whole bunch of them.
Yep.
There's, spoiler alert, no standards on how they're applied or how they're invented.
Yes.
And so it leaves a lot of people wondering, are these worth investing in? Are these worth learning about?
Yep, exactly.
And I just wanted to get your overall thoughts as we head into this topic.
Well, I have two different opposing opinions with it. One is I do not like them for hiring. I think it's a waste of time from a candidate perspective, kind of as you said, but people just tend to mark down what they think people want to hear. And it's like, well, that's not good for anyone. That's not helping anyone. So let's maybe start there.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Before we jump into that, what is because you've taken the DiSC, right?
Yes.
What's your personality?
So I think I'm in the influencer category. It's like there's harmonizer, influencer, and then I'm forgetting the other one, but I'm in
several
that.
others. Yeah.
I think it's a yellow category.
I'm the Myers Briggs assessment.
Yes.
I am an ENFJ.
Okay.
Which, if you believe the status tables, is like 2% of the population.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I actually can believe it.
Well, I mean, it's like 2% of the population, and they drive by values and work to create harmony in the workplace.
Yes.
I think that's a load of baloney, but Science Direct reports that people like fake good more often than not when trying to dig into a personality assessment.
Yes.
And distortion is stronger for job applicants than for dating scenarios, right? Which is
crazy.
Yeah, people feel an enormous amount of pressure to comply to, and there's already enormous amount of pressure in the dating scene. So let's not open that can of worms. But like the fact that the fact that it is even stronger for job applications tells us both how, I don't want to say desperate, but how much pressure there can be on an applicant when trying to join an organization. And what a challenge I read there is when an organization is trying to assess candidates coming through the door. Because everyone knows, it's like the interview process is the only process I know of where everyone knows everyone's a liar at all times.
And it's just like, it's your best first impression. And so it's just like, you don't even know who you are. I feel like, I mean, I've gone to a million interviews myself, or not as a recruiter though, thank goodness, but where it's like, I mean, I think everyone's probably gone to an interview, they walk out and it's like, I blocked out. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember it was good. Like,
well, I mean, the whole time, and side note, that's exactly why I should have rubrics for client candidates, because I have done lots and lots of OCI cycles, and I completely, after the third candidate, I forget everyone.
Yep.
Yeah, I forget everyone. And this is what I wanted to talk about, because psychology today marks that personality tests rely on self-perception, right? And this is the big problem we face. Is I'm gonna go and say I don't think they're any use for anyone.
Okay.
In this professional workplace, I think there's if there's some personal uses, I won't opine on that. I have no opinion, but I have never found it that useful in a team. In a team setting, either to assess candidates or to manage people once they're on the team. I know you don't agree with that.
I do not agree.
Tell me more. Tell me more about that.
So I've used it in various ways of managing a team. I think first and foremost, I've used it from like a communication perspective as a new manager. And that's been really great. At a former company, I basically inherited there was a lot of shuffling around there. And so oftentimes, people would feel nervous joining a new team, me as a manager, all of that. And so it's like I would go in and say, how can I best manage you? How can I support you? How do you like to give feedback? But then we all at this company had taken a personality test, which was great. And we were able to basically go through and say, like, what resonates with you from your personality test that you think I should know to best support you as a manager and as a worker.
I mean, I've always thought that the interview and incoming job application cycle is more about how the candidate fits into the organization.
Yes.
Right? I need people who are communicative, who put their best foot forward. We, as a small organization, we do not value individual contributors, because it's such a small environment that if someone's just off on their own island, it can create a lot of problems, even if the work product is good. So when people are like, I've used these batteries before to manage my existing team, I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that it's corporate astrology, because people are always like, I'm such a Capricorn about this. But they're Capricorn about it because they know what a Capricorn is, right? And so it can also encourage and excuse really dysfunctional behavior when people are like, oh, I'm just not good with people. And then they just point to their personality assessment as being like, well, now you guys... Well, now I have the test that says so. And I've never tolerated that. I've never tolerated that when looking for someone who to work with, and I've never tolerated it for someone on the team. And I should add that almost none that I'm aware of, none of the major personality battery tests were invented by anyone with psychology training.
I was going to say an academic background.
An academic background of any kind.
That's hard to dispute.
And so on. And I think there's also a lot of money in helping managers solve these problems, because managers are people. Right? They're people. And because they're people, they're scared and insecure and nervous and uncertain about how to do things, and they have their own hopes, dreams, flaws. And so they reach for third-party validation on either how to approach an issue or what their own weaknesses are, and that's the void that the personality battery industry steps into. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I'm sure it is.
Just across the U.S. and Europe, right? And so I also don't want our discussion of this in a vacuum to leave out the fact that pushing these is a business in and of themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what are your thoughts?
So it's interesting because another example, this is a different company. Again, I feel like I've done it at every company, again, speaking to the business perspective at all. But I liked the way that they positioned it. I think it was like a 4 colors personality test of something in that. And they had it as that, so you're fitting into 4 different colors, but you are all the 4 different colors. And so it's what colors that you lead with, and it helped kind of define your communication style. So it's like, if you are an orange color, which I am, it's someone that's like, they don't like a direct message where it's like, they like to start out, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? Instead of just like, did you get this done? Which is a red. And so it just helped think about like how to approach people when going up to people's desks and things like that, which I know you're not going to agree with. That sounds nice and fluffy, but I do think it was just interesting because it helped me empathize further on in my career to think about like how people have different communication styles, and also not be sensitive if someone is probably like in a red category, that it's like, you know what, they just came to work and they want to get the job done. Yeah, great.
First, that reminds me of 2 things. One, my math binder in high school was red.
Yes.
And one was blue. And so that's the first thing I thought
hilarious.
of. Yeah. English is always yellow. No one fight me about this in the comments. But second off, I think it rings true to an intrinsic truth is that like empathy should be led first.
Yes.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why we are a hybrid office, despite having a tremendous amount of like infrastructure to be fully remote if we want to. We need people to be at least in occasional proximity to understand each other as more than just a Teams message.
Yep.
Right. And I do think, I will say, there is function and utility in these tests when used from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's interesting because it's like the places that I've done this in the past were 100% remote companies. And so I think that was maybe a way too, that it's like, you're not getting some of these natural break, water breaks, coffee breaks in the office. So I think that's probably an element of like trying to find a way to still have the culture within a remote environment and know who you're working with. So
we'll be right back. Support for the show comes from Time. Time captures every billable email on cases and turns them into client-friendly time entry descriptions completely hands-free. No more lost time, no more pre-billing reviews, just up to 30% more revenue. Get a free demo at thyme.org/factor. That's time.org/factor. Thanks for your patience. Welcome back.
So I just read a Harvard Business Review article that supports my point, of course. So, and, I do believe that, you can have a world-class talent team and still have issues with it performing cohesively together. And that's kind of the point of the article. To create a team, it's more of the sum of the parts that you need to select members based off of personalities, skills, and values. And I know even back in the days as a recruiter working with hiring managers, I feel like oftentimes, it's like you'd be so focused on the hard skills, and it's like you can teach the hard skills, but you can't teach the soft skills.
You'd let a demon into the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up the elevator.
Yeah, and up the elevator. Yeah, the demon came back home. Yeah, when the demon went home and then found you the next morning on Monday. Yeah, I mean, I agree with the fundamental. And the Harvard Business Review is a fantastic publication.
You're a fan.
And I'm a fan, and I agree with the underlying premise. But I again, team dynamics is one of those things where like no one has found the answer. Yeah. Right. And when I was
still searching.
Yeah. When I was in for my MBA, I constantly throughout all of my management classes in particular was like, why are we treating a soft science like a hard skill?
Yeah.
Like why are we filling out checklists when what if the person in front of me doesn't like this?
Yeah.
Destroys the whole modus operandi. Right. And so I think that like when any impediment to getting to the truth of someone's personality should be destroyed, right? So for example, one of my favorite things to do when interviewing second round applicants at our office here at Hemmat Law for our second round of OCI, which I usually handle those interviews. They come in and they're in the conference room, they get all their notes set up, and I literally had Mohammed, one of the 2Ls that we hired this upcoming summer. He literally had an iPad, his laptop, 2 notepads, and like a checklist of talking points in front of him. And I walked in and said, "Hello, Mohammed. Leave all that. We're going to get coffee." And I made him walk and talk the whole time. And that was what got to the truth of who he was and what his values were, because it's really hard to sound scripted and walk and navigate traffic and order coffee at the same time.
Totally.
Right. And for better or for worse, that will show you who they are more quickly than like me giving them a personality battery. Secondly, I think it's a huge impediment. Like you and I are on the same page. It is, I want to share an anecdote about using personality batteries when actually hiring. So one of our paralegals, it has been with us for a number of years now. She's fantastic. She's one of our most skilled individual contributors on the team. It was down to us and another office. And then we said, "Hey, welcome to the team. Here's an offer." And the other office said, "Oh my God, welcome to the team. Before we could give you an offer, fill out this 18-page assessment of your personality type." And she, of course, she went with us.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the number one strategies for any executive team, or when working with any executive team, is to minimize the time between knowledge and execution. Yeah. Right. The knowledge execution gap is you can know and execute at the same level as all of your competitors, of all of your fellow applicants. But if you just do it faster, you're good. You're going to win every time. And I think that is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of personality tests, because it introduces a whole bunch of friction. Because it's like every time I want to do something, if I have to consult, if we sort teams by not by like whether or not they're judging or empathetic, whether or not they're blue or red or green or yellow or whatever, personality matrix they may be.
Yep.
We don't know if that's actually going to hold up given the distortions on the underlying. But I do think it has something to be said about communication styles.
I do agree that I think it does help with communication styles. Again, just knowing, how people like to communicate goes a long way. How do they like to get feedback? All of that. I do agree with your point, though, about, going back to the interview styles as well, is that, like, I know when I was interviewing back in the day, which I'm still going to be interviewing, so. But I feel like one of the main questions I would ask is, like, I'd lead off. It's like, just like a casual question, like, how was your weekend? What'd you do? Or like, what are you doing after this? And it was shocking to me about how many people were like, I'm going home. And it's like, okay, well, what else did you do? Like, it's just like people are so like nervous. And it's like, again, asking those type of like basic questions that you would have if you were, just if I'm going to walk outside this door into our office, like that's the type of people, the communication and all of that. So,
but I do think there is something to be said for conflict resolution, because conflict's a huge part of the workplace.
I agree. So the way I've seen it, again, play out pretty well is that, like, people oftentimes, again, are sensitive and this takes a sensitivity out of it.
They're people.
That you can just approach it and say, like, hey, like, so the program that we used at another former company, it was able to show your styles mesh together and it would give you instructions about how to best work together.
Oh, that's actually kind of cool.
It was. Okay. And so, again, all back to the business. We're in the wrong industry. Just kidding. No, I'm kidding. But, and so anyways, I was able to go through, I had a situation with someone that we had very different working styles, and I was able to bring the paper or whatever, review it together and say, like, hey, like, you're a lot more of a direct communicator than I am. So, and this is where I'm coming from.
What was their communication style? Like, what was causing friction between you, if you could tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I'm a very collaborative worker. And so it's hard if someone does not want to collaborate with me or talk through things with me or just make decisions. And so I'm an information person. And so with that, it's like we kind of were just moving along and not thinking about the people or the collaboration or the happiness of people. And so as a manager, that was just difficult for me.
Yeah, as a manager, I'd just fucking fire that person. Okay, so that's kind of, so let me back up a little bit. Yeah. So like the problem here is not the work output, right? But like I'm very good at making decisions very quickly, for better or for worse, right? For better or for worse. It's actually a major weakness of mine that I'm too hasty. I move too quickly with incomplete information, and I drive myself and sometimes my team right off a cliff, right?
Well, good thing that I'm the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
We're a good pair. Yeah.
But I'm aware of that, and I work hard to find team members who are very good at making sure information is reaching all levels of the organization, right? And so if I ever have someone who's like the best in the world, but they're not talking to me, I think it's the manager's job to go in there and be like, this needs to be corrected. I'm not hiding behind a personality matrix to address this.
Yes.
And if after 2 or 3 conversations things do not improve, you cannot work here.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a luxury you have in law firms a lot of the time, particularly because they're so small.
Yep.
Right. Usually you get dynamics like that at large organizations.
Yes.
Like Amazon employs 400,000 people across the country.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to be able to do something like that in an organization. But the very largest law firm only has 1,500 attorneys. Tiny. Right. Organized into practice groups that maybe only be 20 or 30 people. Right. Which means that you're going to be working in a simulacrum of a small firm environment you're guaranteed almost your entire career, regardless of where you are employed in the industry. And I think that's a real opportunity for managers to move fast and make sure that they don't have not morons, but like assholes on the team.
Yes.
Right. Which is a flaw that we particularly encounter a lot in the law.
In this industry. Yes. Unfortunately, there's a lot of egos.
Yes.
Good and bad though. Yeah. So very smart people. But I do think that because it's like, I know as a manager, it was like, the second there's like a semblance of like something feels off, or I can tell like there's a conflict brewing, or again, I just know that there's management style or employee styles are different.
It's the vibe.
Yeah. It's like you can just kind of like sense it. And it's like that's like when it's a note to yourself that it's like we're not going to pull out the personality test. We're going to get under the hood and understand what's going on and what dynamics are at play, what are the stresses, whatever,
what
and
the
then
problem
try
is.
to
I think
the problem is.
I mean, I'll stand up for interpersonal conflicts here. Is like most people are really trying to do their jobs.
Yes.
Right. I just don't like shying away from the difficult conversations when they need to be had, and I constantly remind myself, because this is something I struggle with contrary to what I'm saying, is this is something I really struggle with. Is I struggle with putting my foot down. Right. Well, it was a major problem early in my career. I had one paralegal who straight up, she called in sick 6 Fridays in 2 months. Right, 6 out of 8 weeks. Yep. She took a 3-day weekend.
A pattern you can't dispute.
Yeah, and a pattern you can't dispute. But I did dispute it for a really long time. And then I finally said, when she asked for like the 9th time, I was like, "Hey, do you have a coverage plan?" I didn't even say no. Right, I said, "What's going on? Do you have a coverage plan? What are your cases?" Right, and in response, she quit on the spot.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, but see, the problem was there was an obvious problem that on a variety of fronts that I was just too uncomfortable to address. And so I always encourage managers and my direct reports to like come to me immediately. Tell me immediately. Don't wait until it's a crisis. And so many times I have found people who are like, "Well, I kind of knew, but like I didn't want to get I didn't want to get anyone in trouble."
It becomes a big deal.
Yeah, it becomes a big deal, or worse, it doesn't become a big deal, and you sit in sort of like that B- territory forever, where it's just like, if things were worse, then we would fix it.
Yep.
Right. But instead, it's just good enough that you just sort of, you just kind of just slog.
Yes. Well, and I would agree with that too, because I think, early in my career as a recruiter, one of the worst parts of the job is rejecting people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one of the things you can't avoid it. Yeah. It's like, I think the mindset that I've had to come through throughout my career is just that, it's like you're doing them a service. If they're not the right fit for the team, they're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you have to kind of backtrack. It's like, even when you're giving feedback, that it's like, this feedback is a gift. It's like, it might not feel like it in the moment, but it's like, you want to be able to tell that to someone because you want them to improve and you want the best for them. And so it's like, I feel like I've had to give feedback similar about like PTO, where it's like, "Hey, you're taking a lot of PTO, but it's like, who's covering for you? The team is getting exhausted." So it's like, again, it's all about the balance of it, but it's like, I think everyone comes to work, wants to do a good job, cares about the people. And so it's like, you're just trying to do your best. And I think everyone is.
Like and follow the show if you're enjoying it, and we'll be right back. Support for the show comes from LegalRev. They don't just market law firms, they grow them. With smart SEO, Google Ads, web design, and AI-ready search strategies, they make sure your next client finds you first. If you're ready to win online, go to legalrev.com/factor. That's legalrev.com/factor. And now to continue the conversation. So to close this out for today, I think I'm going to reiterate my position, which can be sort of summarized in 3 points. 1, I don't trust personality tests as a foundational tool, right?
Yes.
Right. I think they speak to an ongoing truth, but I think the people who invented most personality batteries have an economic incentive to do so and often have no academic or specific training in psychology or sociology. And even if they do, those are still soft sciences that can vary greatly based on too many factors to be reliable. So I have a hard time trusting them as a foundational. That said, point 2, I think they speak to a fundamental truth that empathy and interpersonal relationships are a way to are key to manage a good workplace. And I do buy into that. But 3, I think that the best way to handle these is not to look at your personality matrices, but to just to be comfortable having difficult conversations, right? I think they're corporate astrology, where they sort of rhyme with personality tests. And myself as an ENFJ, it does describe my personality, but I think that's just I don't think one follows the other. Right? Yes. I think it's like a chicken and the egg sort of conundrum.
Well, again, I agree with some of the points, but I do think, again, I don't think it's ever going to tell you who the best candidate is. I think you need other, again, soft skills, all of that, practical interviews, which is a whole other thing in itself that we didn't cover. But I do think it helps you understand the people that are already on your team and how they can best work together and create a cohesive, great culture.
And I think that wraps things up. You want to do the credits?
I think so.
Our content director is Sarah Rutherford.
Our production director is Sam Schenecker.
Our video editor is Michelle McAdoo. We'll see you guys next week.